tutorial. I have prepared this canvas with skeleton key. You can use wood. We used some scrap woods, the boards that we had around, and that worked out just fine. So we're gonna draw out our pumpkin. I have a gray piece of pastel, but I use chalk most of the time. It's just that this was laying around the table. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna determine the shape of our pumpkin. They can be small and squatty, long and tall, round, whatever you like, but we're just gonna come up with like our basic pumpkin shape. Easy enough. So, and then we're gonna find a spot that's center of the top and just about less than a quarter of a way down. This is where our stem is gonna come from. So, and then from here, we're gonna start to create sections. So this being our middle section, everything's gonna go towards that middle. That's where the stem is, and when you see a pumpkin, it all grows towards that center. So basic shape, we're gonna come around both sides, and then make sure we're connecting down here at the bottom, creating a little roundness down here. Then our next shape is gonna come off the bottom and tie into that stem. And then the same thing on that other side. And each time, just rounding off that bottom a little bit to create that section of pumpkin. And then this last one here on the side is going to come up and then over. And the same thing here. And then our back ones come around, down, and so there's our basic pumpkin shape. That wasn't so hard, just basic shapes. Circle, and then everything to the center. From here, we're gonna start to just give our base coat. So I'm just using some faded burlap here. And we're just gonna fill in our sections. So I've just chosen this kind of muted tone, but you could definitely come in here with your Summer Crush. I love the blue pumpkins, so you could do a Prom Queen as your base. Basically just play around. If you did a darker background, say old school, the mint chip looks great for this. So we're just filling in, and I just have a cheap flat brush. I don't really use many good brushes. I'm kind of rough on brushes. I have a few, but these flat brushes do just fine for this. So we just base coat that. Good, so we just got just a quick base coat on that, and then we'll start to blend our colors. So now we're gonna start to create the depth and the shadows that make the pumpkins look real. So I always want to think about my light source. It's real easy tonight because I do have my light on and it's coming from this direction. So basically everything on here where the light would hit would be highlighted and everything below would be shadowed. So we're going to think about that as we start to blend. So a nice base coat. Now we're going to come in with a mixture. I have faded burlap and a little bit of white swan mixed together here. And we're just going to come into this midsection here and just give it a little. So following your sections, coming into our midsection here, just start to create some depth. And then I'll come back in and I'll pick up a little more faded burlap to blend these in together. And still using this flat brush, using the edge to get a point and then flattening it out as I come down the sides. Good, so now I'm going to just come in here with a little bit of the prairie gray and start to create a darker shade here. So coming up from the bottom, creating that darker shade. And then here, so the shadow would be where the stem is coming from. So we'll just start to create that shadow down in there. Good, so you can see how that's starting to take shape. A little more light in here. And if you start to see where you have like a harsh line where you can kind of see where your colors are blending, just get your brush a little wet. It's a great part about our DIY paint. You can reactivate it by getting a little water and blend those colors a little better. Perfect. So now we're going to start to create some definition and lining. So I don't know what happened to my long bristled liner brush that I had in Tennessee, but it didn't come back with me. So if any of you guys have it, practice those curly cues. I do have this little liner brush. I usually like the bristles to be longer so it's much more flowing, but yeah, we'll make do. So you want to hold your brush towards the back of the handle, and what that does, it allows you to get really loose and create loose lines as opposed to tight little sketchy lines. So, and we don't want to be real exact about this. We just kind of want to be a little flowy, come in and just let it flow down. And if it goes outside the line, inside the line, whatever, it's just fine. And this I'm using is just a little bit of the Prairie Gray and maybe a touch of the Faded Burlap, but it's very, very watered down. I add a lot of water to it, so it's really, really, really liquidy. I don't know if you can see that. I'm just going to define this bottom a little more, just to cover up my chalk marks. And so you can see how that's starting to take shape. So now we're going to come in and we're just going to add, I love to add a little bit of color into my pumpkins. So I got some Old 57 here, and we use this sparingly, so it might just be like a little highlight here, maybe one here, and a little there. And then I'll come in with my white Swan, and I'm going to create those highlights. So knowing that the light is coming that way, like this top thing would have one, it would be one there, here, here. And then the light comes around and it hits this direction. So, and then I just kind of blend those in, and if a little bit of that 57, Old 57 gets on my brush, it's perfect. Any of your lines feel harsh, just come back over with your water, kind of soften them up. So now I have my Weathered Wood, and that's my favorite pumpkin stem color, just so you know. Love that. It's the perfect color for a pumpkin stem. So we're going to come up here, so we're going to come straight up and then come over about an inch and make a line. You're like, what is she doing? Take it to the halfway between that line and come into our center spot. Good. So, and now we'll just fill that in, coming to that center, so creating a bit of a wedge here. And then we'll take our Faded Burlap and make that end where it would have been cut, and then a little highlight along here. Right, Alright, so right now our pumpkin looks like it's just hanging out there in space. So we are going to give it a little shadowing. So I take my weathered wood and I water it down quite a bit. Sometimes I actually add just a little bit of the white swan in there so it's not quite so harsh. And then we're gonna have the lights come in this way, so most of our shadow will be that way. So we're just gonna come in and we're gonna start to create a shadow underneath of our pumpkin. So it gets thinner as we come up here, but it gets wider as we come around, and we come part way up. So we're just gonna bring that shadow across. And then this is where I like to rinse off just about all the paint on my brush and just feather that out a little bit. And sometimes I'll actually even bring my fingers in here and move it around. So make sure you're getting right up close to the pumpkin there too. There's no gap between your pumpkin and your shadow. So now, with our watered down weathered wood, maybe a little bit of prairie gray mixed together, we're going to, this is where I really like my long liner brush, but I don't have it, so I have a little round brush, but hold it at the end, and then make our curly cues. And again, you don't need them to be perfect. As a matter of fact, they're way better if they're not perfect, if they're just disconnected and, you know, looking. These are a little thick. I really like that liner brush, but you get the idea. Good. And then I'm just going to darken that up there because I got it a little washed out looking. And then one of my signature things is it always has just a little splatter of paint on it, and we did not do this when we were in Tennessee working on our pumpkin painting class, I think at 2 a.m. I forgot. So I typically take my flat brush and I load it with some darker color, my contrasting color, and some water. And then I just flick it at my painting. Now certainly if you don't want to use my signature splashes, you don't have to, but I'm just showing you how I typically finish it off. And then I do the same thing with a little bit of white. And I don't have enough water on that one, that's why I gave it a, I don't know, like a swoosh instead of a splatter. Perfect. And because we are all artists, we want to make sure we sign our work. Down here in the corners, typically where I do it. And there you have it. The perfect pumpkin. All right, ladies, thanks so much. I look forward to seeing everybody's pumpkins.